then, Helen, Coach Helen, official title for YouFit Studio. And we're talking about change your state. Now, I did start out, to be fair, and I probably will touch on a little bit around how not changing your state or state of mind or state of presence can hamper you in losing weight or generally becoming healthy. However, considering the conversations I've had over the last week, it's actually coming into play a lot with people's anxiety and a lot with people's, how should I put it, venturing out into normal life. I don't know if that's a statement. It's not a great one, to be fair, to describe it. However, it's along those lines, in as much as there's a shift gently towards people returning to previous employment, for example, or kids going back to school. And that's leading to a lot of anxiety over actually returning to a normal way of living, if you like. So change your state is, oh no, I said it would happen. Oh, dying. This is what happens when you don't prepare for all weather at all given times. Jeez. We just had like I've just had winter, summer and spring in half an hour in my garden. It's very annoying. So change your state was this planned live anyway. Mainly because I forced, like Mystic Meg, I foresaw, this is the word, I thought this may happen around this time as people were going back into normal living. So I would start by saying, because I always do what, how, what, why, how, right? So what is a state, or what is a state of play when it comes to things like this? So often there's a loop. It is a loop, I think, because it's repeatedly the same things going round and round inside someone's head in terms of what they're thinking. So it's an inner thought that plays on loop. And it tends to, as we've talked about, the thought ends up creating emotions and behaviours. I've talked about that before. And what is that state though? It can be a state of anxiety, it can be a state of stress, it can be a state of negativity even. And it's imperative, especially at the moment right now, where we look to and understand ways of which you can actually change that state and therefore deal with whatever is coming towards you. Whatever you're coping with in terms of going back into a place of work or back into kids going to school, etc. And dealing with some of the uncertainty around that is also dealing with understanding where your state is and what you need to do to actually change that. There's different ways of doing it. There's three very clear ways which we're going to go through, and why it's important to do it. As I said, I'll go through the why. The why, then what actually happens is that often the negative loop will lead to behaviours that the client or we as people are not really wanting to do. There be behaviours with food or with alcohol or with even lack of exercise. Essentially, it will dictate how we behave. Now, when I've talked about changing the state before, I've talked about words before as having importance and what words have meaning, etc. And that is one aspect of how to change your state. Now, there is also a changing your state is, yes, using other language to change the loop. So to change the loop, it's to exchange words within that loop, and to remove the words that are making you feel anxious, or removing the uncertainty, and it's also replacing with words that have power in terms of the adverse, right? So it's using words that give you strength and power in that loop. So you're changing the statement to change your emotion and behaviour. Now, what I also haven't talked about, which is a fantastic way of changing your state. And actually, when I was talking about this with a client this morning, I actually came up with other things as well that are included in this. So I don't know how many have the urge to do this. I do on a regular basis, and I don't deny myself this behaviour. If you've ever been sat for an incredibly long amount of time, like today, I think it was 6 hours, 5.5 hours. What time is it now? 6 hours. I had a 6 hour sit today. I mean, I did have a real urge to get up and move, and so I did. And why was that? Because actually my mental state had started to be impacted by my physical state, as in I was physically in the same position for 6 hours, and I needed therefore to change my mental state, because I was like this. 5 hours, let's move. And actually changing your physical presence is a fantastic way of changing your state, okay? Because actually if you have the urge to get up and move, or to shake stuff off, right? Like, kids do this all the time. Kids are fantastic at this. If you ever watch kids do this, they are genius at this. But kids will physically not have a care in the world. They will physically move around and shake stuff off and jump up around and get rid of all that energy, right? Not just getting rid of physical energy, they're getting rid of their mental frustrations as well. And as adults, we seem to grow out of this. It's a brilliant means of changing your mental position by physically changing your state. And by that I mean it's actually like actually sitting up straight, it's moving away from the desk, it's actually stretching, jumping, shaking things up. If you ever go to real brilliant coaching events or real brilliant seminars, they'll always get you to get engaged physically. And that's not because you're learning something different. It's because actually what they're doing is they're changing your mental state by changing your physical presence. And this is it's a brilliant thing to do alongside changing your words. Now, I did talk about, on my live I talked about, it was called When Affirmations Fail, I talked about incantations and how incantation is a combination of these two things. And I talked about that in that specific stream, right, that incantations are a means of actually physically demanding what you want from the world, right, by shouting at the postman like I was in my unicorn onesie. Yeah, I don't advocate that, by the way. I've not had any posts for the last 3 weeks. No idea where it's gone. However, what it does do, yes, it's a way of changing your attitude towards things. It's also a way of changing your actual present state of mind, or state in terms of your emotion. And Kate's right, that's why dancing is brilliant. Dancing is a fantastic way of changing your mental state. Because if you've ever witnessed me in a long period of time in the studio, you will find me dancing in a corner. It's again a problem. However, I also have always recognised that physical movement is a way and means of actually becoming, ironically, more present in the moment, by rather than getting into that physical kind of like, you ever see that epitome of like someone working on a laptop or even like this, like that for hours, like Mr. Burns, like, and yet that's what we all tend to do sometimes. We get into a physical funk, if you like, and we end up, part of that is also mentally as well. Imagine that person who's there like over the keyboard, like I must keep working, I must keep working, I must. That's a loop, right? That's a loop and a physical behaviour that empowers that loop even more. So the more you're able to actually step away physically from your position or your state of mind, the more you're physically able to change it. Now, how you do that? I mean, some clients do. I have tried this on clients and it works brilliantly. I mean, personally, I like to go up and jump them down on my lawn. My neighbours are used to it without socks on. Just like, you're right there earlier. That's why I got caught in the rain. I was out there because I had to. After 6 hours, like I need to go outside and feel the earth under my feet. I don't care if it's rained already and it's wet. I'm out there jumping on my lawn, and my neighbour's like, "Hiya, you all right?" Over the fence. I'm like, "Hey." I think she's like, you've had a busy day. She can hear me next door. She's like, "You've had a busy day, haven't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." Does this go around the corner? And she's like, "You all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just shaking off the day." They're used to it. They're like, "Okay, see you later." All right. It's just like the post, but I think my whole neighbourhood thinks I'm mental. However, actually, I've had clients do similar things where they just like literally jump up and down and shake off the day, stretching, just physically moving away from the space for a bit as a real subtle way of doing it, are all real great ways and techniques of shifting your state of mind or shifting where your emotions are going because of that constant loop. And much as I keep saying we're creatures of habit, we also keep falling back as creatures of habit into behaviours and physical behaviours as well that we're comfortable with. So if you are someone who loves working at the laptop, like that example, you're more often than not going to fall into that behaviour quite commonly and fall into the same stresses, right? I must get work done, right? I use that as an example. That's a common human behaviour. It's quite passive behaviour. That's an obvious example of it, and yet it's quite subtle elsewhere. That we don't change our state or our presence very often. And how actually, come a little bit off track, but also part of it as well. It was a really interesting conversation I had this morning with a client, because we talked about this, and we talked about physically being present for something, and how that changes your state of mind and your attitude. So, for example, how this works in a real subtle way that most people don't understand is that we will often dress ourselves ready for a state of mind physically. And by that I mean, if you wanted to do the Met class at some point in the day, a lot of our clients during lockdown have made sure they got into their gym kit at lunchtime to ensure they're in a state of mind to reflect what they're going to be doing. They change their physical state by changing their clothing, and then change therefore their mental position getting ready to do a workout. Likewise, we probably wouldn't get in our gym kit to get ready for a job interview. We'd go dressed appropriately, right? The same way that I get dressed in the morning, putting my uniform on is a means of me getting present and ready for the day, both physically and mentally. Even if I'm on the phone call, if I'm on phone calls, not video phone, I will put my t-shirt on and my shorts on, because I'm getting ready for mentally changing my state of mind and mentally changing my presence and my state to be ready to do the job in hand. And often actually as people we don't change that often, right? So how many people say I'm going to do the Met class and the gym kit's still in the cupboard? Or how many people are not present for work at home in it sometimes when they don't change their physical state and get ready for that mentally. So it all works in really subtle, important ways. The thing is about it is that for being able to change your state of mind allows you to move forward. Now, certainly going back to my initial point, with people who have a higher state of anxiety at the moment because of uncertainty about how going back to work is going to be and what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, they're mentally getting into a space and they're not physically changing their state, as in they're allowing themselves to get into that funk, they're not changing their language, and they're also kind of like this, like physically. Like there's a very, if you see them be talking to these people, they're very like, there's also a physical reaction to it. And if you're in a position like you are at the moment, perhaps where you're in a crossroads of where do you want to go, part of that is actually change your physical approach to what's happening first, and think about the words you're using. Change your whole approach, like you change your clothing, change how you perceive yourself in the moment when you're having this kind of like, what am I gonna do? Actually, right, okay, first things first, remove myself physically from this position, get myself away, change my presence, shake it off if I need to, think about the language I've been using, change the language, start to think of the other ways of approaching something. And this is where it's such a subtle yet very powerful tool to completely change how you approach something in life, or a particular moment that might be challenging or stressful, because what you're doing is changing how you're present in the moment, both physically, mentally and emotionally, all done by changing your sheer state of mind and state of presence and physicality. It's absolutely fantastic to trial on yourself, right? Try it on yourself, right? The next time you get in a position like, I don't know, or I don't know, stressed, I feel emotional. Okay, first things first, move away from whatever position you're sat in, stood in, thinking about, change your physical environment, change your presence, change how you're stood. Really actually start to challenge yourself to change your presence and your state, because once you've done that, it unlocks the key to then thinking completely differently, and actually just a lot more confidently, calmly, more productively, constructively, however you want to put it. Surely even changing your physical presence is the best means of doing that to start with. Change state. It's a good one. Dude, I've talked a lot about clients in this in the last 7 days. And so, recap time. So change your state. A state is a temporary position, by the way. I didn't really clarify that as well. A state is where we're playing a loop into our head, and what that creates is a temporary period of time where we're in a state of something, like a state of anxiety, a state of stress, a state of unhappiness or negativity. It is a state. And the best thing to do is to change it, right? We want to change it because we want to get out of that loop and be more productive, be able to change something. Why? Because we want to be able to move forward. Certainly navigate the next few months, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and there's probably a lot of loops of negativity going on. What we want to do is cope with this stuff and navigate through it easily, simply, straightforward. First thing to do is physically change position. If you're in that loop and you feel it, you know it's happening, be present in it rather than let yourself sink into it. Start to think, right, how do I do this? If I've got the urge to move away from this position, move, get away, jump up and down in the garden like me if you want. Like, come around, I've got a big garden, you can jump around with me. I'm quite happy with that. My neighbours will be like, oh, she's got a friend jumping, woo! Also think about your language in the same place, right? If you keep thinking negative language, negative words, you will become that, right? I've talked to that before. You become your words. Couple that with body language where you're hunched over, or you're in a stressed state and you're almost like rub your head or any of that. Remove yourself from the environment, challenge your own language, find a way that works for you to shake it off, right? To physically change how you're feeling, thinking and acting, right? It's a need, right? It's a need to do it. Certainly it is for people right now. And challenge yourself. Use this on yourself over the next few days. If you find yourself in the position going, I don't want to do, I don't want to do. Okay, I reckon you've got one of those houses probably coming up this week. Be like, I've got to be leaving for 6 months. It's going to be... Think about it. Challenge your own sense of state, like how you approach something, how you perceive even something's going to be. Certainly if there's uncertainty, like there is a lot at the moment, challenge yourself to come at it with a different state of mind, physically, mentally, emotionally, and you'll find you deal with things a hell of a lot easily. Simply, straightforward, no muss, no fuss, get it done. And let's change your state. I love doing this now because I've got it all planned. Lead by example. Join me for tomorrow for Lead by Example. This one was a cracker. Loved talking this one out with a client last week. She absolutely adored this one, and it absolutely epitomised the whole life in that 30-minute call. So please join me for Lead by Example tomorrow at 5, where hopefully we'll not be having day after tomorrow weather, where we go through the range of all seasons in one go. In the meantime, whatever you're up to, have a brilliant evening and catch you tomorrow.